It is a rainy, cold day on Block Island, and the summer so far, that's the best way to describe it. It's sort of rainy and cold. Um, I don't really plan to go to town today. I'm not sure if I'll walk the beaches, but it seems like the perfect day to talk about beachcombing on Block Island. A little about me. I've been a beachcomber since I can remember. My mother didn't swim, and so when we would go to the ocean where my family loved to vacation, my mother would walk the beach. She would take me with her, and we would find treasures wherever we went. And so I got my first introduction to beachcombing and particularly sea glassing when I was very, very little from my mother. I should start with an apology for these hands and nails. Oh my goodness. I am a beachcomber, scavenger, forager, and I have been into the blackberries and I've been clamming, and what ends up happening is my nails get stained from all of that. And so it looks dreadful in the video and I should refilm the whole thing, but yeah, I'm not gonna. Block Island, Rhode Island is an amazing place for beachcombing. There are some things that are fairly unique to this area. One of them is heart-shaped rocks. You can find many heart-shaped rocks. Most of mine are home, but I thought I would just deal with the ones that I found this trip. So I've already gotten 4 fairly large ones. I've got half a dozen or so cute little ones, and these are just the ones I have. This is the heart-shaped rock I found yesterday. Part of my beachcombing adventure has changed over time. This heart-shaped rock, which is not really that beautiful, I took back and will decide what to do with it later. I used to throw anything back from the beach and then regret it because there was something beautiful that when I got home I thought I had in my bag, I didn't actually have in my bag. So now I just pretty much grab anything that catches my eye, and then I sit down and I sort it out and I decide what gets to stay and what gets to go. My favorite when I am beachcombing is sea glass. Absolutely love it. Can't get enough of it. I've been collecting it my whole life. And so my focus is going to be on some sea glass treasures that you can find on Block Island. Depending on which beach you go, the sea glass is very different. If you are in the Andes Way section of the pond, you'll find large chunks of glass. You often find entire pieces of bottles that have been blasted by the sand and the surf. My favorite that I found over there was a glass bottle stopper that's been roughed up by the surf and sand. If you're a real sea glasser, you're going to see there are some spots that are still clear and they're not done. A piece like this, when I was younger, I would have thrown back saying it's not done, not worthy. It's the only bottle top I've ever found, so it stays in the collection even though it's not a perfect piece of sea glass. I can live with its imperfections. My favorite had always been blue. It started out, here's one that's not really finished very well, but this is how it started out as Noxzema bottles. The skin cream was in this beautiful cobalt, and they ended up in the ocean, got beat up, and you would get these gorgeous, deep, dark blues. Now there are a couple types of bottled water and beverages you can buy that have started using this type of glass again. Usually the big difference is the thickness. If you get a big chunky piece, you know it's an older one. The skinny pieces and the lighter pieces obviously are not from the vintage bottles. Over time, I've come to appreciate the lavender to purple pieces more because I love their history. Early glass makers wanted glass to be as clear as possible, and because glass being made of silica has iron impurities, it tends to get greenish. And so to prevent that, they would add manganese dioxide, and it would make the glass clearer. Over time, though, if it was exposed to sunlight, it would become solarized, and you'd get a chemical reaction within the glass that would turn it more of a lavender or a purple. Really special when I find these pieces now, and these are sort of my favorite, although a flash of blue will still quicken my heart. A lot of the glass here on block is really old, and if you take a look at this bottle, that's a really old, thick. So you'll find, this is a bottleneck, obviously. They often retain their ridges and their shape. Certainly they keep their curved shape even when they get polished. Oops. Sometimes the chunks of glass are incredibly thick. And I'm assuming that's from a very old container of some sort. Another really unusual color sea glass is black. That would be a really old bottle because black glass is just not that common. I found some beauties this trip, but the very best piece of sea glass I've ever found in my life, I found over on Charleston Beach. I'm going to include it as a still. It was incredible. Every single bit of it is perfectly polished. There are no rough edges anywhere, and the piece of glass is massive. It's also somewhat heart-shaped, so it is definitely a keeper, but that's a piece that I keep at home. The last time I was out here, I found these. I'm calling them nuggets. The area of an outer beach where people have bonfires. And I'm assuming they just throw the bottles into the fire and then head home. And then the waves come over the years and wash over the area of beach where they had their bonfire. And then these nuggets of glass get tumbled by the surf. None of them are perfect. They all have little spots where they're not polished, but they're still pretty unique, pretty cool, and I grabbed as many as I could find. And it's certainly a part of the beach where I will go back and take another look. Another really cool treasure that I find out on block is pottery that's been beat up by the waves, sea and sand. Here's one that's kind of perfect. Perfectly polished, no rough edges. Some of them have, this one is not really ready at all. You can see the polishing has started, which really hasn't gone very far. This one is beautiful, really smooth, really well polished. This one actually looks like the pottery that comes from Stonington, Connecticut. Well, that's got an interesting history. There was a potter in the 1800s on the Stonington Peninsula, and they would throw scrap into the water. And so this type of... Another really cool thing you can find out here is driftwood. There's some pretty interesting pieces. I don't really think I don't know what I'll do with it. This is another piece of driftwood that is definitely a keeper, not for me. My daughter-in-law loves to make hand-painted signs, and I think this will make kind of a pretty one. So I want to add a little basic instructional section to this video, because if you, like me, have talked to a lot of people about sea glassing and read a lot of books about sea glassing, you've gotten some good information, and you've also gotten some really bad information. And one of the worst pieces of information is that the only place you're going to find sea glass is at the high tide line. So many people, they go to the beach, they go to the high tide line, they walk for miles. If they find a piece, it's one piece, they sort of leave disappointed. And I've had many people tell me
when I'm sea glassing on Block Island, to not waste my time, because there is no sea glass out here. It ranges from, I find 5 or 6 pieces, to I can half fill a gallon Ziploc bag. There has not been a single time when I have come out to Block Island and not found sea glass. So sea glassing 101. Whichever beach you pick, when you arrive, and it's good to arrive at low tide, because that will increase your chances. It'll increase your work as well, but it will increase your chances of finding sea glass. You're going to walk to the level where the water is currently meeting the sand. And you're going to walk down that line about 400 or 500 feet. If you don't find anything at all, you're going to go back toward your starting point at the next rack line up. So you're moving away from the water. There's going to be another tide line determined by where the shells and the rocks and things wash up. You're going to walk back toward your starting place on that line. If you don't find any glass, you're going to go up to the next rack line, and you're going to walk that same 300 or 400 feet. At some point when you're doing this back and forth, you're going to find some sea glass. And from that point forward, as you walk down the beach, that's the line you should be on. That's the line where that tide, that storm, that whatever has washed the glass to that point. And so you're going to walk that line as you continue your search. After you've walked the distance you plan to walk, and for me it's usually quite a few miles, I will turn around and come back to my starting point where I've parked the dinghy at the water line. It allows me to walk in the water a little bit and see if there's anything that's washed up in the time that I've been walking down the beach. So I'm still a few hours from low tide, but it's kind of a boring day. So I'm going to start getting ready and head over now. Plus there are a few beaches I want to hit. So this is my sea glassing bag. I keep my clamming license just in case, bottle of water to drink, sunscreen. This is my boat wallet. I keep a little bit of cash, credit card, license, and then Ziploc bags. I have a variety of sizes. Big ones, gallon size, quart size, and I even have these little tiny ones. The tiny one would be if I found a perfect heart shape piece or a blue piece that was flawless. I would put it in here and then put this into the bigger bag so that I didn't lose track of it. But the reason I bring so many bags, one for myself, I'm usually sea glassing with grandkids or nieces and nephews, and so they all need a bag, and they will often pick up things like horseshoe, remnants of horseshoe crabs, remnants of spider crabs, so they need the bigger bags. I also usually encounter other beachcombers who aren't prepared. So you'll see someone coming down the beach and their hands will be filled with glass that they're trying not to drop, and they don't have a bag. So I usually keep one for me, one for everyone that's going with me, and a few in case I bump into other people. I think today I will also bring my big camera. So I'm going to use some of these Space Saver bags to keep it from getting damaged by the moisture. There have been a lot of beautiful egrets. Great place to come if you're not super fussy about the quality. You can get really big pieces here that are evenly sanded, but the shapes are going to be a little bit wonky. I always find sea glass here, as you can see, it is not the kind of beach where other people would come to swim, so rarely does anyone else come here to look for sea glass. Usually it's used by the boats in the anchorage as a dog walk. This is Andy's Way. That's the direction. See the people in the water over there clamming. I will go the exact opposite direction. There's the salt marsh to do my sea glassing. And this is a beach where the separate rack lines are extremely clear. You can see there's a line along the shore. There's this big line right down the middle. Then we have a line closer up toward the top there. This one, and then we have one here. And there's even a rack line right along the grassy area. So it gives you a lot of different places to look. So this is Charleston Beach. It's the one out near the cut when you're going into Block Island. You're going to go in past that tower into the channel. And you can see really clearly how there are different layers, different rack lines. And so I'm going to start seeing if I can find the proper level for glass.
Crescent Beach is another beach on Block Island where you can occasionally find glass. Usually not near the town end, but if you get closer up to the cliffs, you can occasionally find some. It's usually smaller, very well polished, oval shape, a little bit heavier wave and sand action over there than in Andy's Way, and it's less rocky, which tends to have a slightly different look to the sea glass than the sea glass I pick up on Charleston Beach. So I'm back from my sea glassing today. This is what I found. This is the best of what I found on that first beach, the one that was inside the pond, the really rocky one. This was from Andy's Way. And then Charleston Beach, I don't think I've ever found so much blue and green on Charleston Beach. That was a really good day.